Greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to my movie vlog. My name is John Campia, and we're getting on now to the end of 2017, so it's time for us to make all of our list videos. And I'm going to do my worst of 2017. I'm going to do my best of 2017. But one of the lists I like to do every year, and I'm going to start off this year with, is my most disappointing movies of 2017. Now, it's important to understand that there's a big difference between the worst movies of the year and the most disappointing movies of the year. Like, the worst one, that's easy. You just pick the worst movies of the year. But disappointing is different. See, to me, you define disappointing by where were your expectations for the movie versus where did the movie actually end up being quality-wise. And the movies that have the biggest gap between those things, between how good you thought it would be versus how good it actually ended up being, those are the most disappointing movies of the year. So you're actually going to see a couple of films on my list that actually are pretty good movies. It's just that they came nowhere near to being as good as I was hoping they would be, thus they end up being on my most disappointing list. And some of them are pretty bad, and I had big expectations. So there you go. So again, guys, this is a list, which means since all movies are completely subjective, my list is going to look completely different than what your list looks like. I hope that my list, though, just gives you some food for thought and some fodder for expectations and for discussion. So, with all that out of the way, let's jump into my number 10 most anticipated or 10 most disappointing movie of the year. And it's a movie that's actually okay, that I liked, and that's Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Now, the reason this is on my list is simply this. Guardians of the Galaxy 1 was so freaking good. I just love that movie. James Gunn is one of my favorite directors in Hollywood. I just love the guy. So my expectations for Guardians of the Galaxy 2, admittedly, were sky high and through the roof. Guardians of the Galaxy 2 was an okay movie. I liked it. I enjoyed it. But it was, to me, the worst comic book movie of the year. Even though it's still good and I liked it, it just came so far from my expectations for the film. So for that reason alone, Guardians of the Galaxy 2 is my 10th most disappointing film of the year. Moving on to number 9, another movie that's actually pretty good, but nowhere near as good as I was hoping it would be, and that's Murder on the Orient Express. I am a big fan of Kenneth Branagh and anything this guy does. The cast of this movie is absolutely incredible, so your expectations are also pretty high. And yet, I thought it was a kind of paint-by-numbers movie, to be honest with you. I felt like as a murder mystery kind of failed because it didn't allow us, as the audience, to walk along the mystery with them and uncover the mystery with them. Instead, we were just sitting there watching them do it. And that reason and a couple others, I was underwhelmed with it. Again, I thought it was okay. I liked it, I guess. But compared to where my expectations were, because it was one of my most anticipated movies of the year, it ends up as my number 9 most disappointed. Number 8 on my most disappointing films of 2007 list is Chips. Now, John, this movie should be higher because it's just that terrible. Yeah, but the thing is, I didn't have very high expectations for it. I mean, Dax Shepard is hit or miss, but I love Michael Pena. And, you know, movies like Chips, whether they be 21 Jump Street or whatever, some of them have turned out to be pretty good, so I had mild expectations for it. But this movie's just absolute garbage. So even though my expectation levels for Chips weren't that high at all, where it actually ended up beating was still pretty low. So it comes in at my number 8 most disappointing. Number 7 on my most disappointing of 2017 is Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. Look, because of who the director is, and because this movie just looks so visually amazing, I was actually amping myself up for a pretty damn good movie. And while this movie isn't bad, they do deliver on all the visual spectacle. It is kind of an amazing piece of sci-fi in that regards, it is. But a lot of it just didn't work. Its narrative structure was pretty poor. It didn't flow very well. It wasn't edited very well. And just overall, it just kind of disappointed. So nowhere near as good as I was kind of hoping it would be. So it comes in number 7 of my most disappointing list. All right. Number 6 on my most disappointing of 2017 list is Daddy's Home 2. Now, some of you might be saying, John, come on. You couldn't have had any expectations for Daddy's Home 2, but I'm going to admit I kind of did. Look, I probably like the first Daddy's Home more than most people do, but on top of that, the trailers were fantastic for Daddy's Home 2. So I was really looking forward to this movie. I thought it was going to be great. I mean, I didn't think it was going to be one of the top 10 movies of the year, but I thought it was actually going to be really good. And you guys were mostly right. It was not very good at all. It was a bad movie, so it did not come anywhere near my expectations for it. So it is the number 6 most disappointing film of the year for me. All right, now we get into the top 5 most disappointing. And my number 5 most disappointing film of 2017 is the only animated film on this list, and that's Despicable Me 3. I am one of the guys out there that I really quite like the Despicable Me franchise. I like the Despicable Me movies. I have fun with them, and so I was really looking forward to the third chapter, and the third chapter was as bad as we thought the first Despicable Me would be. And the first Despicable Me was great, but we all kind of thought it would be terrible. This was terrible. This was not very good at all. I mean, it has its moments for sure, and it's not the worst animated film of the year by a mile, but I did have really big expectations for this one, and instead it was just kind of a cheap, let's cash in on this, let's not even put a lot of effort into it. That's what it felt like to me. So for that reason, Despicable Me 3 is the number 5 most disappointing movie of 2017. All right, let's move on to number 4. I'm a sucker for mystery movies, and I like me Michael Fassbender, and I like the director, so I thought The Snowman was actually going to be something really great to watch. Turns out, I don't even think the director liked this movie, to be honest, and I don't think he did. I read some interviews with him. I don't even think he was happy with the way this movie turned out. This was such a fail as a movie in general, as a murder mystery movie also. Like, back in the 90s, you had some great of these style of detective versus master murderer kind of movies. There were lots of them are out. I felt like this was going to be a callback to those. Instead, it's just dreadful. The dialogue's bad, the story is stupid, the plot holes are huge. I don't know how Michael Fassbender continues to get himself into bad movies like this, but he seems to find a way to do it. Snowman is terrible, and I had good expectations for it, so The Snowman is the number 4 of my most disappointing movies of the year list. All right, now we get into the top 3. And in number 3, you knew this one was going to be in here somewhere, but it's the Darren Aronofsky film, Mother. This movie sucks. I understand it's a piece of art by a very artistic director who is going for some kind of artistic vision, and I get it. He did make a piece of art, for sure, but pieces of art don't necessarily automatically translate to good movies. You got to find a way to mesh them together, and as a narrative storytelling movie, this was a pain to sit through. This was a dreadful experience to sit through. I mean, I remember being at the press screening for it, and I even remember the press people, the PR people for the studio, coming up to us before the movie, and this never happened, saying, now, just so you're prepared, this is a really different kind of movie. And like, uh-oh. When the PR people are trying to brace us for the movie, that's not a good sign. And sure enough, this movie was just a train wreck. There are some people out there that really appreciate this film, and that's great. All movies are subjective. To me, I could not have walked out more disillusioned and more disappointed. So Mother is my number 3 most disappointing movie of the year. All right, number 2 is Baywatch. John, how could you have had any expectations for Baywatch? Well, for a couple reasons. Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson's in it. He's one of my favorite movie stars today. I thought the trailers looked hilarious. They were working. I'm a big fan of Zac Efron. This director has put out some really good comedy before. And again, it was in the vein of like 21 Jump Street, and I thought that's what they were going to go for. And so heading into it, I actually thought this could be comedy of the year material, and it is awful. And I'll tell you right now, spoiler alert, Baywatch is also going to be on my worst movies of 2017 list. But again, my expectations were so high for this thing, and it's just rotten. Despite the fact that there was everything in this movie that is kind of designed to be a movie Campia would like, on the outside at any rate, and it just failed. It's not funny, there are no laughs, it's just terrible. Awful movie. So for that reason, Baywatch is my number 2 most disappointing film of the year, which leaves us only with one more, and you kind of know what it is if you saw the lower third here, the picture in the lower third, and that's Kingsman: The Golden Circle. Now again, this movie isn't terrible. It's not a terrible movie. But after seeing Kingsman, the first one, our expectations for Kingsman: The Golden Circle were through the roof. I mean, it was on a lot of people's most anticipated films of the year list for good reason, because the first one just crushed it. Matthew Vaughn did such a great job with this property. Heading into number 2, you add The Statesman to it. You add a few more great cast members to it. This thing's going to be gold. And I remember the first time I watched it, I was like, And then I watched it the second time. I was like, no, this movie just isn't good. Again, it's not like one of the worst movies of the year. It's not going to be on my worst movies of the year list at all, but compared to where our expectations were for this film, and it turned out to be a poor film, and easily to me, my movie-going experiences this year, the movie that made me feel the most disappointed walking out of the theater by far, easily, the crown this year goes to Kingsman, The Golden Circle, most disappointing movie of 2017 for me. So, just to recap. Number 10 of most disappointing films was Guardians of the Galaxy 2. Number 9, Murder on the Orient Express. Number 8, we've got Chips. Number 7, Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets. Number 6, we got Daddy's Home 2. Number 5, we got Despicable Me 3. Number 4, we've got The Snowman. Number 3, we've got Mother. Number 2 is the Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson film, Baywatch. And number 1 most disappointing movie of 2017 to me is Kingsman, The Golden Circle. So once again, guys, remember, this is not a list of the worst films of the year. This is just my list of most disappointing. Your list will look different. So do me a favor, jump into the comments section. Let me know about what are your most disappointing films of the year. Let me know your thoughts. How does your list compare to my list? I'd love to hear your opinions on this. All right, guys, that'll do it for me. Make sure you click the thumbs up button, leave a comment below. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you're not following me on social media, just follow me right here. You can see right there at John Campia. All right, guys, that will do it for me. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's John Campia, and until my next video, bye-bye.